We have made it past week 2. While most things went as expected, there were a few surprises around the NUIC. I am your host, Kyle Kampmeyer. Let's recap week 2 right now. Galena Winslow pulled away from state-ranked Fulton 44-13 after a 12-6 advantage at halftime. Alex Schlichting broke through with some long runs in the first quarter en route to a career-high 287 yards rushing and 4 rushing touchdowns. Aiden Wild added his second 100-yard game in his mini-games to keep the Panther train rolling with their 18th consecutive conference win. Forreston wasted no time with Dakota as they rushed out to a 30-point halftime lead and finished with 390 yards on the ground. Evan Bettner led that rushing attack with 206 yards on the night. Dane Sederstrom rushed for 79 yards and picked up 3 touchdowns to get the Cards in the win column. The Galena Pirates had the biggest surprise of the night in the NUIC as they took down Morrison 34-9. Miles Schumacher rushed for 134 yards and a touchdown, threw for 67 yards and another touchdown. Roman Romer picked up 118 yards receiving with the touchdown. Owen Hafel threw for 158 yards on 70% completion rate with a touchdown and also picked up a rushing touchdown. For the Mustangs, Donnie Reevy led the attack for the second week in a row, finishing with 90 yards and the lone touchdown for Morrison. Du-Pec had a scare, and yes, being down 8-6 at halftime is a scare when you are a heavy favorite. The Rivermen turned it up in the second half behind Dermot Dolan's career-high 141 yards rushing and the touchdown to put the Rivermen in charge for good. Lucas Rousseau added a career-high 95 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns that extended the Stockton went up to Shullsburg and came out with a 54-12 win behind 373 yards rushing. Mark Detweiler hit 100 yards for the second week in a row with 3 touchdowns, while Carter Blair picked up 111 yards and 2 touchdowns to boost the Blackhawks into the win column and a big Week 3 matchup with rival Galena Winslow. On the 8-man side of things, Amboy took the long road to Scioto to play West Prairie and came away with a big win 58-12. Josh McKendry and Braden Klein led the rushing attack for the Clippers, picking up 132 yards and 125 yards rushing, respectively. A close game at half, Amboy only led 26-14, was sparked open in the second half as the Clippers rattled off 32 unanswered points in the win. Polo cruised to an easy 56-0 win over River Ridge, scoring 3 touchdowns on just 3 offensive attempts to open up the game, getting out quickly to a 24-0 lead. Noah Dewey rushed for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Quentin Hart added another 65 yards on the ground with 2 scores as well. Milledgeville picked up another 70 points as they cruised to another lopsided victory. The Missiles are averaging 75 points per game after 2 weeks. Micah Tom Smith rushed for 117 yards with 2 touchdowns. Spencer Nye and Connor Johnson added rushing touchdowns behind 75 yards and 64 yards rushing, respectively. West Carroll picked up their second win with a 54-0 win over Hiawath. The Thunder have outscored opponents 118-14 through the first 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks could look the same before they host Milledgeville in Week 5. Orangeville fell to 0-2, which could hamper their once high-potential playoff outlook into a series of must-win games. It doesn't get easier this week for the Broncos as they play host to Milledgeville. We will break down these Week 3 matchups right now. We're going to flip the script this week and start in 8-man action. The first game we have is AFC going to West Carroll. The Raiders enter this game at 0-2, while West Carroll enters at 2-0. The Thunder are off to an eye-opening start in IHSA play after 2 weeks. Getting their second home game this week, they look to keep that trend going against an AFC team holding on to life with a roster of 18 kids. You can expect West Carroll to run away with this one, provided they come ready to go as they've shown they can through the first 2 weeks. River Ridge hits the road again this week as they travel to South Beloit. The Wildcats enter at 0-2, while South Beloit enters at 1-1. The Wildcats have had a tough go to open the 2024 season. They now have some games ahead of them that can truly make or break their season, but games that should be more competitive and could see them get some W's in the win column and push for that playoff spot. It isn't bleak yet, but they desperately need to get a win this week to stay as a playoff hopeful. Hiawath hits the road to take on Polo as the Hawks enter this game at 1-1 and Polo is undefeated at 2-0. The last couple of years these two teams have met up have led to some hard-hitting games. The Marcos have prevailed in every contest, primarily on discipline alone. The Marcos have reeled off 2 big wins in a row, but they need to stay focused as they look to move to 3-0 this week. There is no time to take the foot off the gas pedal, as the big game still lurks in the shadows in Week 6 as the Battle of the Blacktop will play out against Milledgeville. Until then, Polo gets through Hiawath this week and cruise control to Week 6. Milledgeville and Orangeville will square off in a Saturday matinee as Milledgeville enters at 2-0 and Orangeville enters the game at 0-2. Nobody thought Orangeville would open up the season at 0-2. Everyone thought that Milledgeville would open up at 2-0. The speed and athleticism of Milledgeville will be a tall task for the Broncos to fight against. However, last year the Broncos gave the Missiles everything they could handle in the first half of their opening round playoff game. But with the speed that Milledgeville has shown, along with the large scoring differentials and the ability to have big plays open up quickly, this one could be over quick as Milledgeville looks to be everything as advertised. The Amboy Clippers return home as they will play host to Galva. Galva enters the game at 0-2, while your number 1 ranked Clippers are 2-0. The Clippers have made quick work off 2 playoff teams from a year ago. This week almost looks like a breather before hitting the road for the next 3 weeks against playoff caliber teams. The Clippers need to get this one over in a hurry, that way they can rest up. Expect a lot of big runs from their playmakers once again, as Amboy will run up the score quickly, get the subs in, and head home for the weekend.
This portion of our broadcast is brought to you by Du-Pec Epoxy Flooring. Serving northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, Du-Pec Epoxy is the source for all of your epoxy needs. Give Du-Pec Epoxy Flooring a call today at 815-239-1158 for your free estimate.
Moving into NUIC action, the first game we're talking about is Du-Pec at Dakota. The Rivermen are off to a 2-0 start while Dakota comes into this matchup at 0-2. The Rivermen are looking to get to 3-0 for the second consecutive year. As they head into Dakota on Friday, Du-Pec has not had good starts to either game so far, but they have been able to finish those games off quickly. This week could be the week that Hoffman and crew put it all together as their schedule begins to toughen up. Dakota hasn't scored a point yet this year, generating 129 yards of offense in 2 games. Looking ahead at their schedule, they only have one opponent that they beat last year on it, and that's Galena. Dakota has had a long history of success, and the last time the Indians had a winless season outside of the COVID-shortened year came in 1967 before the playoff era was introduced. The Indians need to find something fast as they are looking at the cellar of the more vaunted NUIC. Forreston and Galena is a matchup that could have easily been game of the week as both teams enter at 1-1. Galena just picked up a huge win over Morrison, a game that saw the Pirates as 3-touchdown underdogs. With only 1 game left on schedule that has the Pirates as favorites, which is a non-conference game with Fenimore, Wisconsin, the Pirates need to keep reeling in wins in order to get back to the playoffs for just the second time since 2015. The Cards put on a rushing clinic last week against Dakota, amassing 390 yards on the night. Evan Bettner looked unstoppable, grabbing 206 yards on the ground. Forreston will need to continue this kind of output for them to see continued success, with arguably their easiest stretch of games coming up. if you can even call going through the NUIC easy. A rivalry gets renewed as Lena Winslow will play host to Stockton. The Blackhawks enter this matchup at 1-1, and the Lena Winslow Panthers enter at 2-0. Stockton looks to sharpen their edges against state power Lena Winslow. The Blackhawks show no fear when facing the Panthers, giving them a tough battle even in lesser years. While the Blackhawks are young, they are getting stronger. Mark Detweiler leads that charge in the Stockton backfield, while Carter Blair added his name to the player to watch list with a great performance against Benton Scales Mount Shalsburg. Don't count out the passing attack, as Stockton can mix it up with Noah Larson at QB and dependable targets in Eli Larson and Aiden Larson. However, the guys in black on the other side know a thing or two about winning big games. The Panthers are searching for their 19th consecutive NUIC win, and let's not forget 4 consecutive state final appearances. Lee Wynn finds themselves back in the number 1 ranking, a familiar spot that they've had over the past 7 seasons. Look for Alex Schlichting, Aiden Wild, and Jalen Rakowska to keep that Panther train rolling. Morrison hits the road to take on Galesburg as the Mustangs enter this game at 0-2. Morrison has received the welcome to the NUIC treatment, and it doesn't get any easier playing a 6A Western Big Six team in Galesburg. The Silver Streaks are coming off a 2-7 season from a year ago, and after being routed by Dunlap in week 1, they beat Limestone by a touchdown last week to put them in the win column. The Mustangs would probably hang with Galesburg last season, but so far they are off to a rough start. The week 1 loss to Lena Winslow was expected, but the effort they showed to make Lena Winslow earn it was noticeable. Galena took them by surprise and surprised everyone around the state. Morrison needs to get things shored up quickly, as a loss this week will put them in a desperate situation to make the playoffs. The likelihood of a 4-win team making the playoffs from the NUIC is slim to none.
Our 11-man game of the week is brought to you by Best Realty. Best Realty has been helping Northern Illinois tackle their real estate needs since 1990. Whether you're buying or selling, in the market for residential, commercial, or acreage, they'll help you get the best deal. Call the Best Realty team at 815-248-3408 or visit them online at bestrealtyproperties.com.
Our Best Realty game of the week pits Fulton against EPC as the Wildcats will play host to the Steamers. Both teams enter this game at 1-1. Fulton had people looking at last week's game of the week as a big game, and for the first 24 minutes, they showed just that as they went into halftime down 12-6. Then, Lena Winslow flexed, and Fulton couldn't recover. They find themselves in the game of the week for the second week in a row, but this time there's a lot more on the line. EPC is in the same boat, avenging a loss to Galena in week 1 last season, and then holding an 8-6 lead at the half against 3A state-ranked Du-Pec. While the Rivermen made adjustments, the Wildcats couldn't adjust to the Rivermen in the second half, leading to a lopsided loss. Now, they have state-ranked Fulton coming to town. Draven Zier has been the show pony in the backfield for the Wildcats, and they'll need to rely on him to get the ground game going. The defense will have another dual-threat QB to contain in Dom Kramer, who is playing at a much higher level than last year thanks to that experience under his belt. The winner of this game could be a difference maker in playoff teams come the end of the season. And we're talking about it right now, and it's only week 3.
Our NUICfootball.com state rankings are presented by Leading Edge Fundraising. If you need to raise funds for new uniforms, tournament expenses, equipment, or more, look no further. Brandon Sharp at Leading Edge makes it easy for you and your team to have a fun and competitive way to raise funds for your program. Give Brandon a call today at 563-514-1647. Leading Edge Fundraising, your premier fundraising company.
Looking at our NUICfootball.com state rankings, we're also going to add the power ratings brought to you by CalPreps. We'll start with our state rankings first, and then we'll go into what the ratings look like second. So we'll start in the 8-man game, and staying at number 1 are the Amboy Clippers as they enter week 3 at 2-0. Entering at number 2 are the Polo Marcos. At number 3 are the Milledgeville Missiles. And number 4 are the Martinsville Blue Streaks. Entering at number 5 is Ridgewood. At number 6 is Flanagan Cornell Woodland. Number 7 is Pawnee. Number 8 is South Fork. Number 9 is Milford Cisna Park. And rounding out the top 10 is the Heat of West Central. 2 teams receive votes for the week. St. Thomas More enters week 3 at 1-1. And new to the state rankings this week is the upstart West Carroll, who is 2-0. Over in Class 1A, the number 1 team this week is a tie between Lena Winslow and Althoff Catholic, as both teams enter at 2-0. Calhoun jumps up to number 3 with that big win over Camp Point Central, and entering at number 4 is Aurora Christian. Speaking of Camp Point Central, they didn't fall too far. They come in at number 5 with a 1-run record, and jumping up to number 6 is Leroy at 2-0. Number 7 is Greenfield Northwestern. Number 8 is Stark County, making their way into the state rankings for the first time this year with their win over Anawan Wethersfield. At number 9 is Fulton after they dropped that game to Lena Winslow. And rounding out the top 10 is Anawan Wethersfield as they drop down to number 10 with their loss to put them at 1-1 on the year. Other teams receiving votes include Newman Central Catholic, Hope Academy, KZ Westfield, Rova Williamsfield, and Hayworth. In Class 2A, not a lot of changes, but there are a few. Number 1 remains the same. Maroa Forsyth is 2-0, and at number 2 is Bloomington Central Catholic, 2-0. Jumping up to number 3 this week are the Farmers of Farmington, as they are 2-0. Entering at number 4 is Rockridge. Number 5 is Quincy Notre Dame after their big win last week. Number 6 is Shelbyville. Moving up to number 7 is Johnston City. Jumping in at number 8 is Chester. At number 9 is Tri-Valley. And rounding out the top 10 is the Redskins of Momence. Other teams receiving votes include Pana, Chicago Christian, Mater Dei, Bismarck Henning Rossville Allen, and Gibson City Melvin Sibley. And moving into Class 3A, once again, not a lot of shakeup here. A lot remains the same. Number 1 are the Byron Tigers. Coming in at number 2 are the Montini Catholic Broncos. Entering at number 3 is Princeton. Number 4 is Wilmington. Number 5 is Williamsville. Number 6 is Seneca. At number 7 is St. Joe Ogden as they jump up after their win over Tolono Unity. Number 8 is Monmouth Roseville. Number 9 is Du-Pec. And rounding out the top 10 is Tolono Unity as they drop after their close loss to St. Joe Ogden to fall to 1-1 on the season. Teams receiving votes include Roxana, Nashville, and Eureka. Looking at the power ratings through Cal Preps, in 8-man, at number 1 is Amboy. Number 2 is Milledgeville. A little bit of a flip there between them and Polo. Number 3 is Polo. Number 4 is Martinsville. Number 5 is Ridgewood. Number 6 is Pawnee. Number 7 is South Fork. Number 8 is Milford Cisna Park. Number 9 is Flanagan Cornell Woodland. And at number 10 are the West Central Heat. In Class 1A, number 1 goes to Lena Winslow, with Althoff Catholic coming in at number 2. At number 3 is Calhoun. Number 4 is Camp Point Central. Number 5 is Aurora Christian. Number 6 is Leroy. Number 7 is Greenfield Northwestern. At number 8 is Fulton. Number 9 is Hope Academy. And at number 10 is KZ Westfield. In Class 2A, taking the top spot in the power ratings are the Trojans of Maroa Forsyth. At number 2 is Bloomington Central Catholic. Number 3 is Quincy Notre Dame. Number 4 is Chester. Number 5 is Rock Ridge. Number 6 is Farmington. Number 7 is Chicago Christian. Number 8 is Tri-Valley. Number 9 is Shelbyville. And at number 10 is Gibson City, Melvin Sibley. And looking at Class 3A, the power ratings kind of resemble the state rankings. Byron is number 1. Number 2 is Wilmington. Number 3 is Montini Catholic. Number 4 is Princeton. And number 5 is St. Joseph Ogden. Number 6 is Seneca. Number 7 is Du-Pec. Number 8 is Williamsville. Number 9 is Tolono Unity. And at number 10 is Roxana. That gives you a look of what we have coming ahead here in week 3. You know, it's hard to believe, but we're already a third of the way through the season once this week gets finalized here. It goes by quickly. There's a lot of big matchups this week as well. And it's hard to believe, too, we're already talking about the playoff picture and the effects that some teams could see with wins and or losses this week as we continue to make that push to October 26th and Selection Saturday. But all we can do is keep chugging along, get out to those games, enjoy those Friday night lights, and as always, root for the NUIC.